welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you all join us today and to have these amazing women here for our second annual Women Leaders panel. We thought it would be a great idea to bring in this terrific group to talk about how they've been able to grow their own design businesses in their own unique ways. There is no one cookie cutter method for a creative business in particular. Obviously, and I'm sure we'll get to it, there's some best practices that they have found that have worked. But each has had a unique journey and unique motivators and kind of a unique experience that they're excited to share with you. So today we are joined by Stephanie Lindsey and Jessica Nelson, both with Etch Design Group, as well as with Vanessa Cooreman-Smith with Flourish Interiors. Ladies, why don't you take a minute? I'm just going to go with the order that I see on my screen, and we'll start with Jessica. Maybe just introduce yourself, and we'll go around.
Awesome. I'm Jessica Nelson, and like Liza said, alongside me is my business partner, Stephanie Lindsey. Together, we are affectionately known as Jessany by our team, and we are the co-founders of Etch Design Group. We are a dynamic interior design firm in Austin, Texas, and our talented team of 13 women. We excel in residential and commercial design spaces that are not only functional, but beautiful. And in addition to our design services, we actually just recently launched a new business called AI for Interiors. And our goal with that is to dive into interior design and how AI can function within that, and helping other interior designers do so. So that's a little bit about us. And Steph, I'll let you finish the introduction there.
I think you summed it up pretty well. Yeah, our team's in Austin. We love residential and commercial projects and have just an amazing team.
Vanessa?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Vanessa Cooreman-Smith. I'm the owner and founder of Flourish Interiors. We are located in South Bend, Indiana, often commonly known for the University of Notre Dame. We're about 90 miles outside of Chicago, too, so that's kind of a big feeder for our region. And Flourish is a full-service interior design firm. We do primarily residential, but we do what we call boutique commercial as well, where we've done a lot of commercial projects for anything from a bridal salon to a hair salon, a spa, things like that. We also are a team of 13, so we have a lot in common with Etch on that front. And we started in the very end of 2016, kind of 2017 was the first full year of operation. And we really kind of hit our stride back in around 2020, 2021, and grew quite a bit around that time. And I think we're known for very classic design. We love symmetry. I like to describe my style as kind of modern French. So I'm very inspired by kind of old world European influences, but love to put that modern spin on it and keep everything really fresh and clean lined as well. So.
Awesome. And I'm Liza Hausman. I'm the Vice President of Industry Marketing at House and excited to be the moderator of this wonderful group today. So let's kick it off. I'd love to hear what inspired each of you to pursue a career in interior design. Stephanie, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. So I'm going to date myself just a little here in the fact that if anyone remembers Trading Spaces before the real HGTV craze, I fell in love with Trading Spaces when I was in high school age, and Ty Pennington in those days was a carpenter on that show, and his career then grew from there. But I thought Trading Spaces was the jam. I watched every episode, wanted to live that life. And so that's really where the spark started. I also grew up with a mom who, when she wanted something changed, instead of having the budget conversation with my dad, she would just repurpose things. So if it was a drapery change, she would just use that drapery as a pattern and get fabric and create new drapery, or she'd reupholster our couch, new pillows. And so I grew up in that creative environment as well. And then there were a couple hiccups along the way, but it's been a pretty straight course since then.
Awesome. Vanessa, I'm going to hand it off to you, but before we do, I'm just going to remind that our audience out there that they can use the Q&A or the chat if they've got questions. I'd be happy to take those and pose them to our panelists. So please feel free to keep it interactive and send across your questions. So Vanessa, over to you.
Yeah. Well, I think I came out of the womb just absolutely passionate about anything beautiful is the way I would describe it. And from the time I was a little girl, whether it was playing Barbies and rearranging the houses, and also I love fashion, so I was always putting new outfits on them and so forth, or rearranging the furniture in my own bedroom, and clipping pictures out of magazines, you name it, always just drawn to the world of design, the world of fashion, and things that are beautiful. And in college, I was an art major at St. Mary's College, which is a sister school to Notre Dame here in South Bend. And I actually first pursued my love of those things by starting a women's clothing boutique. So I owned Flourish Boutique, which was, selling clothing and accessories and so forth, from 2008 to 2016. And then just kind of my family has this wonderful history in real estate and home building and land development. And there was a lot more synergy in the direction of interior design, just a lot more opportunity. And my husband and I were kind of building almost two separate empires going in different directions. And so we decided to change course and make Flourish an interior design business. And ever since, that has just, it really is in great alignment with my family's business. So.
Super. And Jessica?
Yeah. So I think as far as what brought me into design, that was a bit of a windy path. I did not know this is what I wanted to do from an early age. Growing up, I remember always having a love for transforming spaces, whether that be like rearranging my bedroom or repainting my walls. Sometimes my mom would even let me get crazy and rearrange the living room furniture, which was always fun. Mm-hmm. But when it came to selecting my career path, I initially went to college for business. And I did that for a few years. I think after I failed accounting for the third time, I realized that was not my passion and that was not where I wanted to go. So I switched gears a little bit. I did a little soul searching. I ended up doing a 10-year career path in technology, and then finally discovered that interior design was my passion. Actually, after I met my sister-in-law, who was going to school for interior design. So I switched gears, went back to school, got my design degree, and I think luckily for me, having all of those experiences together really helped me with my career today, just because we have a large design firm and the technology side still remains there. We use AutoCAD every single day. I love doing renderings and, 3D layouts for clients, but also kind of paired with those couple years that I did get in design business. And then the 10 years in technology as well. I think it's just really helped kind of drive the success here with Etch.
Great to hear. Maybe before we jump into more of the design side, a little on the personal side, I'd love to hear maybe just one fun fact about each of you that folks may not know, and just to kind of round out the, not everything that you do is work. What should we know about you? Jessica?
Well, I think in addition to design, I also really love construction. And over the past 10 years, my husband and I have actually built 4 houses together. We've remodeled our Etch office, and we most recently just finished remodeling our personal house, which we moved into in December. So I think you could kind of say like I'm a design junkie, and I really just have to have a project going at all times in order for me to feel grounded. So that's just that weird quirk about me.
Vanessa?
I would say if there's any identity I have outside of work, it's the other one is the mom identity, and my life is very full by the time you do those two things. I have 4 children, and they span in age wildly. So I have an 18-year-old who's headed off to Purdue University in the fall. And then I also have a 19-month-old who was a post-40 surprise, but a wonderful one. And so my life is very full, and we're doing everything from watching Miss Rachel and learning ABCs to applying for college. So, yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. And Stephanie?
Well, I also have 4 children, but mine are much closer together. They are all under 7.
That's intense.
And, I'm kind of proud of the fact that I know how to weld. And my dad, we had a project together and he taught me. And so I use that as my little fun fact every now and again and have welded things with him and shelves and railing. And it's just a fun side thing.
Super fun. So let's dive into the design side a little bit. One of the things that I thought was so interesting about each of your businesses was that you did really seem to have a niche that you developed in the market and sort of a brand that you'd, created and cultivated. And Vanessa, maybe we can start with you, but would love to hear maybe a little bit about, was that something you knew from the beginning? Did just something that evolved as you started to think about, business in the market? But tell us a little bit how you developed your brand and your niche and how you think about it and how folks should think about it for themselves, maybe.
For sure. Yeah. So my business, like I said, is definitely aligned with our family's real estate business and kind of grew up out of that organically. And specifically there, and this is kind of the niche that we're talking about, is that my husband was selling very high-end condos, townhomes around the University of Notre Dame to high net worth people. And he always jokes that you don't buy a second home in South Bend, Indiana, because anyone would want like a lake house or something in Florida or something. But that by the time someone gets to buying an additional residence in South Bend, it's often like a 5th or 6th house or whatnot for, again, high net worth executive type people and so forth. And so what we found is these people were buying, these townhomes, and they needed them entirely designed, furnished, and also stocked and ready to go. So these are, people that fly in on jets and so forth. They have 48 hours to spend in South Bend. They want to go to a football game or see their child. And so they appreciate a white glove concierge. So that's kind of our niche, as we not only do design, but we offer concierge as well.
Super interesting. And Vanessa, we've got some questions, and I'll let Vanessa and Stephanie both answer this as they go around. But did you go to design school, and how did you develop your design skills?
Yeah. Stephanie, you want to go first?
I did. Yeah, I went to design school.
So, and I'm the third or the odd person out because I did not. So I have a degree in art from St. Mary's College, and then I have a degree in fashion and retail management. But again, my dad was a land developer and home builder, and my parents flipped houses my entire childhood. So I grew up just absolutely flooded in this industry. And then my husband owns a brokerage. So housing has always been an important part of my life. So art combined with housing equals design.
Great. Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got, amazing, talented people with all different backgrounds, right? All makes for different creative paths and different creative skills. Stephanie, you want to talk a little bit about the design brand?
Sure. So I think it's interesting because over the years, Jessica and I have realized that our styles have changed personally. But at the very beginning, and I think we still do, but we really then loved color and pattern and bold things. And really, without putting a plan in place, our first really large new construction and furnishings project as a business was very colorful and had a lot of pattern and a lot of bold features. And that set the tone for our niche, honestly, because then people came to us because of that portfolio piece and said, oh, this is the style that I really love. And at the beginning, we really thought that we would be able to craft our own style, but in reality, it kind of chose us, I think, and from that one client. And so from there, we have a lot of clients that come to us because they see a lot of wallpaper, they see a lot of pattern, color, texture in our portfolio, and so they want that too. Obviously, we also want to always craft around a client style, and so we feel like we're really good at listening and understanding what it is that makes each client feel fulfilled in their space, and that we can really design around that and make sure that it's something that is curated to them, that they feel alive being in, just bringing life to their space.
Some of the questions we get frequently are about, as designers are looking to scale, how do you know when it's time, because you guys all have teams, how do you know when it's time to bring on other people to the team? Any advice on managing that team? And then, tying into this brand conversation, how do you make sure that what you're delivering to the customer stays on brand as you start to add more folks, who aren't necessarily attached at the hip the way that you guys are to your day-to-day? Whoever would like to jump in on that.
There were multiple questions, so we'll see how far Liza tell us if we missed anything.
No worries.
The first thought that I had was when it's time to hire. Honestly, I think that there's multiple portions to that answer, because for us, and I know Vanessa, when we've talked in the past, that for us, it was a need that when we became moms, we needed to figure out how to run a business and also be moms. And that required letting go of some things and being willing to say, okay, I can allow someone else to do something, even though they're going to do it differently than me. That's okay. We'll still have a happy client in the end. And so for us, it really, each time we've hired, it's because we've had more projects coming in the door than we can handle. And they're all ideal clients and projects that we want to work on. And so we've expanded the team because of that need. In terms of keeping it consistent and making sure that they're representing Etch the same way that Jess and I would. Honestly, it has a lot to do with processes and documenting those processes. And like I said, letting go of some things. It's not always going to be exactly how we would do it, but that's okay. And that's honestly what I think makes it so great, is because they see things that we wouldn't have. And the things that really matter to us, or mistakes that we've made in the past that we don't want to repeat and we don't want any of our team to have to repeat, we document those in our processes and say, okay, this was a big lesson learned 10 years ago when we did this. We don't want you to ever have to go through this again. And so we try to take all of those lessons learned, document them. And then we also have processes in place where they step by step know, okay, this is where I'm at in the furnishings design process. And so this is the next step. So we're trying to make sure that each client has a very similar experience with Etch. And so it feels cohesive.
Vanessa, did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, very similar. And we've talked a little bit before we kind of, met each other in advance of this. And it was just remarkable how similar our experiences on hiring and team size were. But I think when that growth happens, where you just have all of this opportunity, and it's opportunity that you truly don't want to say no to, where it seems consistent, that you're increased leads and projects to consider, and you've applied a filter, and all of them meet that requirement of what you would consider an ideal client and project, then you know that you're ready to hire. And then one caveat to that I would add is I also like to hire for skills that are maybe not my strengths when I can. And so because I don't have that formal training, the rest of my design team does have formal training. And that really, I appreciate that. I feel really confident in my own aesthetic and my background in the industry, but I also like knowing that my team is composed of people that have that formal training. And then, we have, for example, a kitchen designer on staff who specializes in kitchens and so forth. So making sure that there's kind of this diverse talent stream inside of the team is helpful, and hiring to make that, representative of all of these different types of skills is really helpful. As far as managing them, I have a manager for installation. I have a manager called a project coordinator who helps manage the process of the design like as we move through the different phases of the design, that person is helping coordinate all of the projects moving forward. And then we use both House and Asana religiously to help keep track of our process. And then we also do continuing education and training very consistently too. So we have once a month, almost full day training with our design team. And, you know, even at the beginning of each year, we usually sit down and look at the trends and the branding that we want to put forth for the year. So I'll put together like a whole presentation and lead that and buy my whole team lunch, but sit them down and go through like, here's what we want to see in kitchens in our designs this year. Here's what we want to see in fabrics and patterns and colors and you know, all those kinds of things. And we even have challenges like who can interweave this trend or this, you know, this look into a design the fastest and so forth. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. We've got a lot of questions coming in, which is great. So I'm gonna, Jessica, turn to you with one of the questions that we've gotten, which is, you know, do you know who your ideal customer is? How did that evolve, or how did you figure that out over time? Because I assume that it changed over time. And you know, how do you determine whether it's the right fit for your firm?
Yeah. So several years ago, we developed 3 client profiles that were our ideal clients. The one that I feel like search for the most, we call it the park bench client, where if you see this client, you know, say at the park on the weekend, maybe with their kids or something, that you would want to go over there and sit down on the park bench and talk to them. And I think that that's really important. You know, with our clients, it's like matchmaking, honestly. We try and make sure that they are the right fit for us. It doesn't have to be the biggest project. It doesn't have to be the best project, but it really does need to be a great client. I think that's probably what it really boils down to in any scenario. I think our ideal client will always value our expertise and our commitment to, you know, giving them the best product, and really work with us through the process, understanding that it is a process. You know, I feel like a lot of inconsistencies with interior design, given that like HGTV kind of took over this world of interiors, and, you know, things don't happen overnight and they don't happen below budget. And, you know, it's not $50,000. It's, you know, $500,000. It's $1 million. So I think that, you know, being in the scenario where you're looking for clients, just making sure that they are the right fit for you and your team is so incredibly important. Most of our referrals, like word of mouth referrals, are probably our best source of like really great clients, just because they've come from the recommendation of someone that we worked with. So they know how we work, they know how we operate, they know how we bill. And I think that those people really value every part of what we do. And so they're bringing people to us who will also value what we do as well. So Steph, what else would you say?
I think that summed it up. Vanessa, what's your ideal client?
That's a great question. I agree. They don't all have to look alike, and they don't all have to have like the biggest project or even the biggest budget. I mean, there's definitely a threshold of, you know, is this going to just work for someone or not, as a luxury service? That said, I believe that if you treat people well, and even if this is like a first home or the first time they're hiring a designer, and you can only do like a consultation or, you know, a quick in and out project or something, that there's still value there, and that you're nurturing relationships, that if that person really does value an interior designer, that they're going to come back to you and refer you out and so forth. So I've kind of been scrappy that way over time, and built, you know, a fan base and so forth that way. But ideal clients, I would say there is kind of a difference between an ideal project and an ideal client too. And obviously it's wonderful when they're both, and that is always the goal. But we always go through a discovery process. So when we get a lead or an opportunity kind of presented to us, we go through a discovery process, and you know, that starts usually with a phone call and often a site visit. And through that, we're able to kind of uncover a lot about, you know, who's the decision maker, what kind of investment the client is willing to make, what kind of communication they have, what their style is, et cetera. And usually by the end of that discovery process, I can get a feel for whether this is going to be a good fit or not. And usually I can even tell whether the client's going to say like, yes, we want to move, even if I'm willing to move forward, are they willing to move forward? And I'd say, 9 times out of 10, I kind of know at that point whether it's going to progress. So.
Yeah, super interesting. I love that you guys document, who that ideal client is, and you have that clear view in your head, so you're able to ask the right questions and get to that. Once you're in the project, Stephanie, I'm going to aim this one at you because I know you've got some opinions on that. What happens? Like, what are some of the most difficult client conversations? So hopefully you have that ideal client, an ideal project, and everything goes smoothly. But I think we all know, having been through projects myself, that sometimes you're going to have a more difficult conversation. What are those that are typically that typically come up, and how do you handle them?
So the most difficult historically have been scope conversations near the end, where the time billing invoices have gone on for months and they are trying to figure out, okay, when is this complete? How much is this total going to be? And when we started, we had an estimated range, but the problem was that the client would always lock into that lower number. And so if we went over that lower number, even if we were still in that range, there was always a conversation to be had. So budgeting, honestly, is the sum of it in terms of the hardest and challenging conversation, because money is emotional. And it's hard to know going in, even if a client tells you what their budget is, what they really are comfortable with and what they value. We've had clients who had pretty significant budgets, but they didn't value furnishings or they didn't value us. And so we didn't align throughout the project because they didn't see a value in a rug. So to them, it should cost hundreds of dollars, where most of what they were being shown was thousands of dollars. And so those budget conversations are always really tricky to navigate. And we've just taken the stance over the years that communication is the foundation, and we really want to preempt every conversation. So if we know that, or we're even sensing that gut feel that you get of like, ooh, this might be a touchy subject, or you feel like that client is just acting a little differently, there's just something there, we typically coach our team, get on the phone, just pick up the phone and call them, be direct about it, be transparent. You can still be very collaborative and graceful, but it's better to just call out the elephant in the room and talk about it to get through something, as with any relationship, really. And so budget's been the number one thing, but we try really hard to just be proactive in communication.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think budget is always one of the hardest things to talk about. It can be challenging to talk about in the beginning because people are sensitive to, like revealing, like, I think sometimes they're worried, oh, if I reveal how much I really am willing to spend, then they'll want to go over that still, and so sometimes it can be even just gaining, like, you have to work to gain the trust of the client so that they can have open conversation with you. But then obviously, if you run, especially in remodeling projects, more so even than new construction, when you run into the, unforeseen problems that just happen with remodeling in particular. And then of course, that brings up the second hardest conversation, which is time delay, I would say. And people, get their heart set on being in a home by Christmas, or being in by their child's graduation, or, they have some kind of vision, or they're selling a house that has a closing and now they're having to look for interim housing and so forth. And those conversations can be really challenging too. But I agree, you have to hit them head on. I always say never sit on bad news. So, when I find out a problem, like something got installed incorrectly or something went out of stock or whatnot, I always do a little due diligence really quickly to see if I can, find an alternative or, provide a solution before I even present the problem and so forth. But ultimately, if the client knows that you sat on bad news because you were afraid to talk to them, it's really going to erode your trust. And so the very best thing you can do is be their strategic partner by alerting them to, any type of obstacle immediately, but also be solution oriented. So.
Great advice. And I know we talked about employees too, and this similar feedback, which is right, don't sit on it. Make sure you're giving that regular feedback. I think it, as you said, Stephanie, it works across all kinds of relationships. I'm going to combine a couple of audience questions that we've gotten. Hopefully it won't be too overwhelming, but we've got somebody, who's a new design studio that's kind of overwhelmed with being the one person show, right? Is taken on a bookkeeper, but isn't sure, do I bring on project manager? Do I bring on somebody to help market and generate business? Not sure what to do. And then other people asking like how you're using House Pro to get leverage for your business. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how you're kind of combining the software and House Pro and kind of those features, what you're using to get leverage there, and then how that kind of affects your thinking, or how you're thinking about where do you hire that next person to get the most leverage. Jessica, you want to take that one on?
Sure. I think regarding the hiring situation, that's a tough place to be in the beginning, because whenever you're just a one-man show, you're doing everything. You wear a lot of hats, and then also you're having to design too. So it makes it really challenging. I think for that scenario, you would really have to look at what your business really needs. I would say the bookkeeping side, maybe coming from, the team of Stephanie and I, she's very good on the numbers. I'm, definitely more forward facing on the design front. But the bookkeeping is obviously something that you have to have. Maybe for the back end side of the business, you just hire not a full-time staff, but maybe you just hire someone to help you just manage the books on the day-to-day. I think your more important role would be probably that project manager, to really be able to offload some tasks that you're doing on the day-to-day. Because if you're trying to run the business and design and be the bookkeeper and do all of those things, you're going to run yourself ragged. And I know that because we've done it. And so I think our very first true hire was a project manager. And we quickly hired maybe one or two more project managers almost immediately after that, because we saw how much we could actually offload to this other person that was able to do the things that previously only we were able to do. And it was such a huge relief. And just knowing that they understood what to do without us having to constantly be on them and directing them. So that was really huge. And I think that was probably the biggest turning point for us once we really started to grow. Was that first project manager, followed by the second, then third. We always had design assistants and just interns kind of helping out, but that was a big one for us. And then as far as House Pro goes, I might actually let Stephanie take that one, because she deals a lot in the House world. And we had obviously tried a few softwares out before we went to House Pro, and we really loved being on it. So Steph, I'll let you tackle House Pro.
Well, real quick to go one step deeper on the hiring subject. From a financial standpoint, hiring other designers who are going to be billing then allows you in the future to bring on that admin staff. And so if you go straight to the admin staff, then the revenue that you have is going to be solely, for the most part, based on what you can do. And you're already spread thin as the owner. So if you can have someone who is increasing the revenue of the company, then allows you in the future to then bring on that admin role. And then on the House Pro side of things, we really utilize the reports. I mean, we probably are in there more throughout the week than anything else, because, well, I'm a numbers person. So looking at what the team is doing and where maybe that data helps me understand where they're spending their time. And it also helps me forecast when we need to bring on more clients and maybe when not. So that's really helpful. And more than anything, we use proposals, invoices, and purchase orders, and we send the live links and send it directly from House to our clients. So we're not having to download anything or email anything. The project tracker is a huge thing for us, that we can manage everything that's been received and ordered. And so just really keeping track of all the data is the thing that stands out the most for me there.
I agree too. My hiring experience was just a little bit very similar, but at the same time, I approached it maybe a little more tentatively at first. And I definitely started by just having an assistant or two for the first couple years. So I didn't jump to having like a project coordinate. We call it coordinator, but it's basically the same thing as project manager. So we did not jump to that till about year 3. And so basically, I was still controlling. Excuse me, I was still designing and controlling the project, phases and pushing forward and all of that. And then just having someone assist me. And I actually started with a summer intern. And that was a great way to try it on for size, just having someone. And again, this is not someone that was, very mature or had a lot of experience, but it was someone in design school with at least had the language to speak and had a great attitude and hard work ethic and so forth. And even that was just so amazing, whether it was running and getting samples or, setting up for a presentation or, sometimes getting lunch for you so you can keep going. And once I did that, once I kind of started there, I quickly saw the power of delegation and the power of not doing everything yourself. And that gave me that confidence to then go further and deeper into a bigger salary with, a more experienced person on my staff. And I also definitely agree with Stephanie, as much as possible, try and get people that are going to be billable, and try and restrain yourself from, adding staff that's more administrative and so forth. It is necessary eventually. You absolutely can't run a business without having that at some point of, as you scale. But I think that, obviously focus on the revenue, and trying to build that up and so forth. And then as far as House, I will say House revolutionized my business. It's no coincidence that my years of growth also coincide with when I started using House, because I went from managing all of our purchasing and so forth in Google Sheets to putting it into House and being able to send proposals that had markup, right in there, which massively increased our profit margin. And the clients loved being able to see these proposals with all of the information, the different images and views of things. And, it just completely streamlined that whole process of proposing things to clients. And then, of course, it streamlined the process of ordering via the purchase orders and using the project tracker and so forth. And keeping all those things clean, even making sure that your staff or yourself, if you are a woman show, keeping, your selection boards and so forth totally clean, so that after someone actually does agree to move forward with a certain product, you go back and you remove all of the things that you didn't end up using or didn't work out for any reason, so that you're moving forward into the project and you can go there and just see exactly what is in the project, and making sure that tracker is completely updated with every little shipping notification and, once you've received it and so forth. All of those things take discipline, but also completely eventually allow you to scale and take things off of your plate to grow and to have, that peace of mind and put people in seats where they're talented so you can do what you love to do.
Great advice. A couple more questions I'm going to combine from the audience. One is about kind of where you find your interns, kind of what level you look for, and maybe just kind of where you source in general. And the other was kind of networking with the construction side of the business. So, if there are contractors out there that would love to work with you, are you happy to have them reach out? How have you built kind of that network of contractors?
I think it's a mix. On interns, I've had people reach out to me before that have turned out to be amazing, and I've also had family friends. One of my most successful interns, who was with me for like 3 summers in a row, and I'm hoping will come work with us permanently eventually. She was actually a family friend who, they reached out and said, "Oh, my daughter is interested in interior design. She's a hard worker. Can she come spend, the summer with you?" And the first summer we had her entirely on install. So, she really wasn't trained formally in design at that point at all. And so she was just out there steaming sheets and, cleaning behind install and so forth, and truly just kind of doing some grunt work. But over time now, last summer, we actually gave her almost like her own little baby project that I oversaw heavily and so forth. But it was really joyful to get to see her grow and evolve through the process. So yeah, that's been all over the place. And then construction, I would say the same. I've had people reach out to me, and I've had times where clients brought a contractor to a project that then I loved, and then I had this ongoing relationship with thereafter. And then there's been times where I needed to source a new vendor or contractor, whether it was just for one, whether it was just an electrician or whether it was a true general contractor. And I've actually gone out and kind of done homework and researched and approached people myself. So it's all over the map on that front.
Well, on the intern front, for us, the majority of them come from the local universities, but we've seen the trend, and I'd be curious to know if anyone else has seen this recently, but over the last 6 months, we've had a lot of people reach out to us that are changing careers and trying to get into design. And I don't know what to attribute that to, but it's been really interesting. We've had 2 interns that we've hired that come from a different career and different background and are now starting their design life. So that's been really interesting. But the majority they come from the local universities. On the networking side, I think that we look at it more from just relationship building, and we're not seeking to gain anything from those relationships. Like, we truly just want to form a friendship. And a lot of them we are on a group text with, or, we send funny memes to each other. And so we look at it as, what can I do to help them and make their life better? And the other thing that's been an interesting realization over the last year or so has been that, sometimes you're going to click with the builder and sometimes you're not, and that's okay. And I've always had in my mind that everyone needs to love us and we have to make everyone happy. And, and so when maybe it doesn't click or doesn't have that spark in a relationship, I've always been sad about that or hurt, when in reality, it's just like friendships. You have some people that you click with and you want to spend all your time with, and others that you just don't click with, and that's okay. And so with builders and even architects and realtors, others that even vendors in the industry, there's some that you just build really strong relationships with. And for us, we're always trying to ask, like, hey, what can we do? Is there anything that you're lacking right now? Any gaps that you have? Is there anything we can do to help you? Who is your ideal client? So that when they come through the door, we know, oh, this is so-and-so's ideal client. We should reach out to them, and not going into the conversation of that meeting of, okay, well, how can I get the jobs that you're working on? How can you refer business to me? We try to flip the script and show them that we're not here for one project. We're here for the long haul. And we really want to build relationships with others in the industry that will span decades.
Mm-hmm. It's very smart. Isn't there something like give, then ask, or there's some kind of like motto like that that reminds me of. So yeah, add value first, before you ask for anything.
Yeah.
I love that advice. Maybe that's a good segue of kind of a fun or interesting, more personal question, but maybe share like one high from your business experience, just like a memorable moment, and then maybe a low, like something that was discouraging, and how you got past it. Who would like to start that one? Jessica, maybe?
Hi. I think one of my proudest moments at Etch was the very first office that we got. I think driving up the first time and seeing, Etch Design Group on a big sign on a really busy road in Austin. That was just such a cool feeling. And it was we did this. This is awesome. And I think lows, we go through challenging times all the time. Running a business is hard. And I think dealing with discouragement is inevitable part of running a business, especially when you're as invested in our clients and our team as much as we are. I think most challenging issues often involve clients and team dynamics. And I think those situations are just emotional because they're like deeply intertwined with people's feelings and expectations. And I feel like we always try to strive to understand like all perspectives in every scenario anytime we're having an issue. And then also just handling conflicts with both empathy and fairness. Beyond that, I think when we face tough times, we just try to keep it real. It's just and try not to let that overshadow all the good that we've done, because we've had a lot of achievements along the way, and I think it's just part of the journey. So Steph and I believe in just pushing through and using each challenge as just an opportunity to grow and improve upon our process and ourselves. And I think ultimately just maintaining humility and embracing change and learning from each other, and having that mindset helps us just overcome a lot of challenges.
Nice. Vanessa?
Yeah, I would say a couple highs. I recently got to remodel my own home. And then also almost immediately thereafter, we built out our current office as well. So, and I think just being able to do a project or two, in this case, back to back, that were completely my style and on brand, and getting to express my own vision, like to a blessing and really exciting. Another high that happened, it's not a specific high, but it's like when it happens, it is a high, which is when clients, when past clients come back and ask you to do more phases or like another project for them. It's like the ultimate compliment, and it just always makes me feel so good, so that's always really a rich blessing. And then lows, I would say, just like Jessica said, running a business is tough. I think I've talked to enough designers to know that I'm not alone in that. Last year had some bumps in the roads, just like as interest rates rose and so forth. People pulled back on buying new homes or, building, like doing remodeling and so forth. So it was just a little bumpier year for us last year. So I just think that like since I started, it had all been uphill and so forth. So just feeling that a little bit of a contraction last year was like, oh, okay, like this is part of running a business, and we adapted and are doing very, very well. And I feel like the activity has massively increased back this year. So, that's in the rear view mirror, but as a business owner, you have to expect it to happen again, and be ready to adapt and accommodate those changes in business flow and so forth. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, Vanessa. Like, how much do you think adaptability, like how much does that come into play? Like being flexible or being able to react kind of quickly to what's going on in the market? Mm-hmm. How much has that affected your ability, to be successful?
Yeah, it's so critical. And I think I know Stephanie is a numbers person, and I wasn't naturally that way, but I've had to become that person. And I live a lot in my numbers. I have kind of like a master financial spreadsheet with all these different tabs with like analysis of different ways. So it's like you have to know kind of your monthly nut and what level of revenue you're doing to support the staff and things that you have, your expenses ongoingly. And the moment that you feel that change or you see that change in the numbers, you have to start evaluating like, okay, well, what project am I onboarding right now that could increase that back? Or do I need to make a change in my overall expenses, to bring those expenses down and so forth. And so you have to be willing to adapt, but you also have to be prepared and understand your numbers and have like ways to look at them so that you see it happening before it's too late or like it's too like it gets too serious or something, I guess is how I would put it. So if you understand your numbers and you have the right tools to evaluate them, you're going to be able to stay ahead of it. So
I think that's great advice. And Stephanie or Jessica, or maybe Stephanie, since you're the numbers person, maybe just talk a little bit about that sort of balance of the business side of design and how you kind of build that muscle in a business, especially for new designers. So I think people get into it because they love design, not because they love numbers. But you clearly need to build that numbers muscle, to make it and to make money in the business.
Mm-hmm. Design is also tricky because you might take in money that's in the bank that isn't yours. And so that's really hard for anyone to digest that, oh, I've got this amount on my bank account. I'm doing fine. And then the next month, the credit card payment goes out and it's all gone. And so I think that you build that numbers muscle by truly understanding what money is in the bank that's yours versus what is already committed. And that's where it goes to the reports of, okay, these are the purchase orders that have not been paid versus these are the retainers that are sitting in the bank account that we will be then giving back to clients, so on and so forth. We also hired a business coach that helped us truly understand our financials. And, one of the things that I think is lacking in almost every industry is actual business classes for technical skills. And most creatives get out of school or start in their field without understanding those things. And so our business coach really helped us understand, what is a profit and loss statement? What is a balance sheet? What do each of those numbers mean? And what does that help you do moving forward? Because if you know your numbers, then you can plan.
I will add to what Stephanie just said too and say, in addition to the reporting, I had that same, exactly what you're describing, right? You're collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars from clients, either by retainer or for furnishings that you have to go out and purchase. And, every vendor is different. Some don't charge until the item ships and so forth. So you have to be extremely dedicated to those reports and so forth. But what I did that enhances that for me is I have 3 different accounts, essentially, bank accounts. And so all of my money flows into something I call the income account. And then I take all money that's dedicated for client purchases or like going to vendors, like even tradespeople and so forth, like it's committed, right? It's a liability. I move that over into what I call the trust account. And then anything that is actually, coming in, that's revenue, that is like someone paid an invoice from billable time or things like that. Then I move that over into what we call our income account. And I know that that's safe to use for operational expenses. And so that has just been really, really helpful because I can, though the report, you should be able to have the reports that tell you that without having to have 3 separate accounts. So it's not like you shouldn't depend on that as like a crutch, but still I find it helpful for me to be able to like look in one account and know that all of the things in that account are devoted to this purpose and the other one is devoted to that purpose. So, it's good to have both, but that's just something that's worked for me and it's worked so well. I thought I'd mention it because if you're listening to this and it could help you, then it's worth saying. So.
Yeah, it sounds like it provides some good discipline on cash flow and just making sure that, right, you're not misleading yourself about
exactly
where you are and what's happening.
Yeah.
We have a question, I think, kind of related to this and a little bit tied to what we talked about earlier, but maybe it's about saying no to clients and projects that aren't going to be profitable. And you guys are all in, a good position now. You've grown your businesses, right? You've got kind of enough business, but there's probably a lot of folks out there that are struggling with like, I need a project, right? It's hard for me to turn projects away. I've got somebody, for example, this designer has a potential client who keeps trying to drop the budget and doesn't sign, and that kind of keeps dropping the budget, So, how do you decide, like, either get that over the finish line or walk away from that project and be okay with it? And what's some of the advice you might give to folks? Really struggling with saying no.
So my advice probably isn't so much on how to make the decision. Maybe Jess or Vanessa can pipe in. My advice is more on how to say it, because
that's important.
It's really, I think any given time you start to form a relationship with someone and you don't want to hurt their feelings. And we have had a couple instances where we have offended someone and we didn't know that we were offending them, but afterward it came out that they felt offended that we commented on the budget being too low or things like that. And so we've formulated how we say this now. And honestly, I think this topic relates to almost anything, where when you have those relationships with builders or architects, like we've gone to them and said, how do you say no to clients? And it's been so insightful to hear their experience, who maybe have been in the industry decades more than us, and can give us insight of don't do this, do this. And so you might reach out to people just on sensitive subjects, and you're building the relationship at the same time as you're talking about something that's really important in the industry. But we've decided over the years that instead of saying we don't feel like we're in alignment on budget, or we don't feel like we're in alignment on timeline, or things like that, because that's how also bitten us, then they come back and they're like, oh, well, we'll increase the budget, or we'll stretch the timeline, or we'll change the scope. And we're like, no, we don't want to work with you. So, so then we've since decided, okay, from now on, we are pretty transparent. Like, we would absolutely love to work with you, but we truly feel like we aren't the right fit. And we want you to have the best experience. We want you to have the home that you've dreamed of. And we don't feel like we are the right firm for that. And so here are a couple other designers that we feel like actually would be a really good fit, and we hope you reach out to them. But just trying to like be nice and caring and graceful, but also not pinpointing a specific thing. Just we don't feel like we're the right fit.
I'll add to that, Steph. I think that in the beginning, we're really good about, the process of signing on clients and really making sure that they are our ideal client. But from the beginning, I think you have to be clear about the budget, the scope of work, and then also providing clients with something tangible that you can say, this, based on the project, based on the scope of work, this is kind of what you're looking at in terms of the budget. Do an actual cost breakdown. If you're talking furnishings, if you're talking construction, obviously that probably is going to come from the builder more so than you, but we'll talk furnishings for a minute. Actually do a line by line item breakdown of, this is what it takes to furnish this room. Does this feel comfortable to you? Are there any areas where you feel like, you don't want to spend that much? Maybe it is not a $10,000 rug. Maybe it's a $2,000 rug. Have those conversations up front and really dive into the budget with them so that they understand, the intricacies of what each space is going to take in order to deliver the product or the end result that they're looking for. I think so much about our job is just really educating clients, and you have to do it early. You have to do it up front, because if you wait too long and then you start talking about the numbers, or then you start talking about the timeline, then they've already got something in their head as to what it's going to be, and most likely you're not in alignment with them. So I think you have to be upfront, clear, talk numbers, be okay with that. You have to get comfortable with it. So if you're not comfortable with it, you got to kind of practice, and you got to keep practicing, and you got to keep practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have those times where you're like, this feels really uncomfortable. And it is at first, but I think the more that you do it, the more it becomes second nature. And I'll add to that, when it starts to become second nature, it's whenever you're in your groove and you're feeling like, okay, I've done this enough times. I know that they're giving me a $50,000 budget and it's not going to be anywhere near that. So I have to have that conversation up front and feel confident in what I'm telling them. And then that way you guys all walk into the project on the same page, and there's no disappointment on either end.
Yeah, I agree. We through that discovery process that we go through, we actually send what we call an investment guide. And a podcast that I listened to just a few months ago actually was talking about the value of using the word investment over the word budget. And so internally and like mentally, I still think of it as a budget, because it is. However, the word budget, implies inherent, like almost like no one likes to hear it. It's kind of negative. It's like, oh no, we ran out. It's like kind of immediately, it's like a scarcity mindset or whatnot. Like, how far can we stretch it, or what do we have to say no to because we can't do everything? And investment can be a little bit more positive, because it's like when you're saying to someone, what is the investment that you're willing to make on the furnishings for this home versus what is your budget for furnishings, right? Like those two questions sound very different, but they're asking the same thing. And it doesn't then imply or insult, because it's not telling the person that you think that they can't afford a larger budget. You're not insulting them. You're just saying, how much are you willing to invest, right? Now they may have limitations, that where they couldn't invest more, or they may have plenty of resources and they just aren't willing to invest more. And so I've kind of switched to referring to it with clients as an investment. And we send an investment guide that is essentially a budget and breaks it out by room and as well as our time and so forth. And yes, going into that up front, I will not even do a project anymore where someone is not willing to explore that with me. So.
Great. Incredible advice. I can't believe we've come to an hour because people still have questions and you guys have so much to share. But hopefully we can take some of these questions and follow up offline with them. Thank you guys so much. We've had incredible feedback already from this audience on what you shared and how incredible the advice is. So thank you all so much for your time. Wishing you a wonderful year and a successful rest of the year. And I hope we will see you back again here soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.